Welcome back to this week's podcast, guys. We're on number 8. Chris, what's going on? We're on number 8.
Hey, we've got some nice weather happening out there right
We
now.
do. 69 today, sunny.
Yep,
And you
yep.
know what the number one topic on social media is?
I know, but you tell me.
People wanting to get tillers out and start disking food plot and planting seed in the freaking ground.
We got a
It's
month and a half of freezing weather yet.
Yes, we do. It's way too early to even be considering food plots unless you're in some area where it's time to frost seed. But as far as anything else goes,
Mm,
guys, please wait because that's
yeah,
one of the it happens every year where people discuss food plots and they get a couple warm days like we have been and they just want to start throwing seed in the dirt.
yep. They're gonna blame it on the seed. Wasn't
Hmm.
their fault.
Yeah, blame it on the seeds, not their fault.
Silly.
It's too cold, man. Like a lot of them seeds, they love heat. I mean, clovers, get away with a little bit cooler, but if you're doing any kind of beans or even Egyptian wheat, buckwheat, all that stuff loves heat.
All that stuff that can't even germinate unless it's over 50 degrees soil temperature, not air
Yeah.
temperature, soil temperature.
Yeah. Even some of it even needs warmer than that, like, Egyptian wheat and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah. I wanna take a dive. I don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole, but I want to dive into this into bedding areas,
Mm.
creating bedding areas on properties. And uh it's a big topic right now, and I actually have made a few videos about it in the past, and I just released one today. But it's a big topic. Have you been seeing the same thing?
I have. There's a couple of guys I've seen on Facebook that are talking about it, and there's certain buzzwords like buck bedding and this type of thing. And
Hmm.
I I, I said it before. It's false hope.
Yeah.
Unless you have a couple hundred acres and you can designate some places that you can knock down areas and make sort of a bedding area out of it
Yeah.
and never go in there and just let it be a good sanctuary.
Hmm.
You're just wasting your time if you don't have the property to do it with.
Yeah. I would just challenge that statement with the couple hundred acres. I think you can get away with it on smaller properties pending how the property lays out.
Mm,
You
possibly.
know, if you can get around your property, and still have those bedding areas, but still be able to maneuver around that property, I think you can get away with it on smaller, especially in like if you have a lot of terrain features and stuff.
It's relative. It
Yeah.
depends on who your neighbors is and
Hmm.
what you have going on around you. But I guess it would be possible. But these guys that go out and do these consultants, or they give this hope of we're going to make bedding areas here and there, and we're going to hold deer. That's another key buzzwords there. We're going to hold deer. Well,
Hmm.
that's great if you have the property to do that. But
Hmm.
most hunters or guys that are food plotting don't have hundreds of acres,
Yeah. Yeah. Most guys are dealing with 20, 40, 20 or 40 acres. And, I,
and
some,
only a couple are tillable, probably.
yeah, a couple are
You know,
tillable. And some consultants and stuff that or landowners that I consult on, some of those, smaller acres, I can, recommend betting on it if they can still maneuver. But most times, from what I see, when guys are talking about, bedding areas or buck bedding, they're talking about if you have a specific buck you're hunting, you can make this bedding area and have this specific buck bed here. And I
uh,
just I just call 100% bogus. Um, I Yeah, it's just
don't get
bogus.
me started. I've watched this one guy, and they literally cut a log
I've seen it.
and they rolled this log into this position, and
Hmm.
then they got like a bale of hay and sprinkled it all out in front of this log and said that that's going to be this nice soft spot for a deer to lay down,
Yeah.
and they're going to set a camera on it. Okay, I don't know that they've actually proved that it worked. I'm not saying it wouldn't work,
Hmm.
but Why are you overthinking that?
Yeah.
Okay, that is my whole thing about this whole betting thing.
It's
Uh,
it's
it
because, that person made that video is because they needed a video, they needed a topic. They were trying to probably get the video a lot of views on it, and they said it creates controversy. And the whole deer hunting world is about those trigger words that get people excited because of making money. Like yes, I do consulting. And I tell people how to design their land and everything, but I would never tell somebody, I would never give somebody false hope and say, hey, if you cut this log and rake out this area, and that you're going to have a specific wild free ranging deer bed there. Is it possible? There's a very small
it's
percentage
possible.
that it may happen, but don't get your hopes up.
It's doubtful though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just do not agree with that.
Hmm.
I I have seen so many deer just when they get tired, they just buckle them front legs and they plop down.
Hmm.
They snooze it off for 10 minutes and then they get up and move on.
Hmm.
And it doesn't really matter where they're at as long as they're not in danger,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll bed anywhere, really.
I mean, it's crazy in the middle of a plot, in the middle of a yard. It really doesn't matter as long as they
Hmm.
feel safe and secure. They'll bed anywhere they want,
Yeah.
you know. Now, I did see a very good, I should say, very well done video by another fella, and he had his property timbered,
Mm.
and the mess that was left behind, he went in and made some corridors and things, and uh, kind of steered the deer through his property some, and some of the big mess, the big, you know, buildup that they left behind. He went in and trimmed out an area so that there was like covering over their heads.
Hmm.
And then he put a camera on it, and the deer were going in there and checking it out.
Yeah.
But deer are curious by nature. I mean, I could go down here and fire up a chainsaw on my property and knock down one tree,
Hmm.
and within a couple hours they're on it.
Oh yeah.
They just come to see what it's all about.
Yeah.
I swear they listen for that saw and they follow that noise
Yeah.
because they know that there's going to be something hitting the ground and it's food.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but
Well,
yeah, it was a well done video, and he did put a camera on it, and he did show the deer were coming in and out of there, and there was a couple that actually did bed down in there,
hmm
and so I mean that worked, it did. So I can't say that you know I can't be 100% against it, but I just think majority of it is bogus, like you
I
said.
think it is, and I think the way to break it down for people, and the reason we're talking about this is of like, we said in the past, like false hope. There's a lot of consultants out there that will provide this buck betting information to clients, and it, as a person, like we get excited by, like the video I produced today was trigger words. If somebody says cheeseburger, I'm on it.
Mm,
If somebody says steak, I'm on it. It's an exciting word. And when a hunter, is say they're not having success, they're having a tough time, they're not seeing much deer on their property, all of a sudden there's this guy out there, whoever it is, that says, "Hey, if we cut on your property, you can have buck bedding." Well, now all of a sudden that hunter is excited. He's like, "Oh man, I can go out to my property.
yeah,
I can just cut some trees down and have buck bedding."
yeah,
There needs to be more thought into it than just that.
right.
You can't just go out there on your property and start cutting. The way I break it down is if you have small property, say 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres, something like that, the pri- if the property doesn't lay out correctly to where you can have bedding and still maneuver, your primary focus should be food, because deer will find a place to bed. If the property is larger, okay, like 50 to 100 hundreds of acres, then you can start putting in strategic bedding areas. That's the way I see it. Smaller properties focus on food. You start getting into larger properties,
Yeah.
start focus on bedding and food, because on those large properties you can have both of them and have success. Small properties have food because deer live by their stomach. They have to feed. They'll find a place to bed.
Yeah, and I've said this 100 times. I don't care if they're on a neighbor's property
Hmm.
bedding, as long as they have to walk through my property
To
to
get the
check
food.
out that little plot,
Hmm.
to get a bite. And
Yeah.
that gives me a chance to look them over and decide whether or not that's one I want to shoot.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
the
I mean, I
biggest.
do care. I shouldn't say it like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do care if they're on a neighbor's property because they might get a crack at something before I
Right.
do. But
Well,
you
it's a
understand
wild
what I say.
it's a wild deer. You can't control what it
Yeah,
does.
you're not gonna. I mean, you can steer them certain ways through corridors and strategically placed food items.
Hmm.
I mean, they're gonna come that direction eventually. But
Yeah. Well, there's
yeah,
too many when people say stuff, there's too many like absolutes. There's nothing that's absolute, you know,
not in the
a hu-
wild.
not in the wild. It's a wild deer.
That's it.
So it's very property specific. You just have to be careful, guys, because I've seen it even on my consulting trips. Is somebody I get there and they're like, "Hey, man, I implemented this person's technique. I implemented this person's technique." I go through the property. I'm like, "Dude, where do you hunt?" Because your entire property, you have something going on.
It's a habitat improvement plan,
You you can't get around the property. And they're like, "Yeah, it's weird because I did all these improvements and
right?
I don't see no deer."
Yep. Yeah, they did a habitat improvement plan, but didn't plan on hunting.
Yeah, all this stuff is very good. Bedding areas, cutting, you got to have sunlight, you got to have regrowth, but there needs to be a plan. You got to think for yourself on your property, not just because somebody
Yeah.
says to do it.
Right. All right.
All right, we're in second gear. What do
Yeah.
you got?
Let's shift, man. I think we beat that one
We
up.
we said we weren't going to go down a rabbit
Yeah.
hole, and I think we did.
Yeah. I think we did. Okay. Now, I know we already talked about some frost seeding, but as you guys know, on my channel, I get a lot of ideas from Facebook and YouTube. Uh, and lately, I know, like I said, I know we just did frost seeding, but
Hmm.
these people keep asking because it was 60 degrees today. They want to know if they can till or frost seed now or when should I plant? Okay. And
You're talking about Clover specific.
yes,
Okay.
clovers, alfalfas, things right now,
Right.
hard seed that you can put it in the ground.
Hmm.
Um, and we're like I said, you can go back and listen to that podcast. What I wanted to talk about though was people were asking about clover and alfalfa specific stuff. And I wanted to talk about a first time person that has never did the frost seeding at all ever before, and they want to know how to get into it. And I don't
Hmm.
think we covered this on the last time. And specifically, what I want to say is you just don't want to pick a spot, even if it looks like it's bare dirt.
Hmm.
You just don't want to pick that spot and say, this looks like a good spot. I'm going to frost seed here. Okay. And here's why I say that.
Hmm.
I want to,
Tell us why.
well, this is why
Take a deep breath. Tell us why.
you are going to have probably, you're going to have a lot of competition. There's going to be grass and weeds and
Hmm.
broadleafs that
Hmm.
are going to be there in that dirt waiting to pop up with your seed.
They're
Okay.
also going to germinate quicker than the clover.
And it'll overtake and
Yeah.
you will fail. And that
Hmm.
is my point.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, Chris, what did you just say? Here's what I want to say. You are better off picking a spot that you want to have as clovered. And you are going to want to plant that not late, but for your fall planting, you would be better off establishing clover in the fall this year,
Mhm.
okay, and have the weed competition at its lowest going into fall. And then you may have, I mean, if even if you had to spray or whatever to get that plot started, okay, make sure you eliminate all that competition up front. Get the clover growing and establishing. Then you're setting yourself up, because everything you do every time you plant, you should be looking forward to the next season.
Mhm.
And you will be setting yourself up very pretty for next spring. You can then frost seed into that established clover,
Mhm.
okay, and be weed free and eliminated all that competition. And you will be surprised at the second year growth you will have coming off of uh, that clover. Because if you know anything about clover, it grows slow, very slow. And
Mhm.
so you do not, people get frustrated with their first year's growth. So second year, you're going to come out banging, and you're going to be filling in bald spots or whatever when you frost seed. And you're going to be very happy if you listen to what I just told you.
Talk about filling in bald spots.
Yeah, it's a good thing you wear your hat.
I know, you too.
What?
Um,
I got Miracle Grow up there.
yeah, me too. Clover, like you said, is very slow to germinate. So when you're trying to establish it in the spring, those weeds, I mean, weeds are going to be green up before anything else.
Oh,
Now, obviously, if you have like wheat and rye or something, those are going to green up first before the weeds come up. But clover takes a long time
it
to
does.
go, and it's just going to get smothered out. There's a rush on food plots, but it's better. People, they want to do food plots. They want to, but on some things it's best to just wait because you'll just fail. Like you
Yeah,
just said, you'll fail.
you will
And
fail.
it's like, oh, I bought junk seed or
Right. It's
um
everybody's fault but theirs.
yeah, it's everybody's fault. It has nothing to do with the seed. It's just you didn't it prep goes into everything. You no matter what you do, most times, sometimes you can prep and fail, but most times, the more you prep, the better success you're going to have.
Mm.
And that goes with clover if you're trying to
Yeah.
plant it in the spring. You
Yeah, I made that mistake early on when I first started plotting about 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
I thought, okay, spring's here, the snow's off, the frost's out.
Mhm.
Okay, I disked the ground and I threw that clover in. Well, then I just unearthed all the weed seeds. And
Mhm.
then it just was total garbage after that.
Yeah.
And I got so frustrated with it until I really researched it more, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, the whole idea of a food plot is a food plot. To have the species grow that you
Yeah,
planted that you paid for, you
more than the
know,
weeds.
more than the weeds. You know,
You want the plot to
yeah.
shine, not the
You want
weeds.
yeah, you want to get your money's worth out of the plot. And
Yeah.
and if you're planting other things, not just clover, some weeds in there during the spring and summer is normal, it's fine. Deer eat the weeds and stuff like that.
Right.
But when you go into the fall, it's best to have a weed-free food plot because you need the most tonnage at that time of year to last you through the hunting season. And speaking of establishing clover for first time, as you said, bare dirt if you have a spot. If you planted brassicas in the fall with no clover, now a person could come in there
Yep. Road.
this winter, in last year's annual brassica plot, they can come in this year and go ahead and frost seed that plot.
Yeah, because you
Yeah,
probably eliminated the weeds to plant your
right.
brassicas in
Yeah,
anyhow.
you'll have a good start.
Yeah. So you could go ahead and do that. Now, um, I don't recommend starter fertilizer for for frost seeding, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you're going to try to establish clover in the fall, don't forget a little bit of starter fertilizer when you plant that, because we hear it all the time. Some knucklehead on Facebook says you don't need fertilizer because clover makes its own nitrogen.
Hmm.
Well, a seed does not contain nitrogen.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can go back and watch some videos on that too.
Hmm. We
We'd
have
be
a we have a food plot seminar video that has a lot of that information on there.
yes, we do.
You guys can search it on YouTube. Just type in how to create the perfect food plot, and I think it
Mhm.
pops up number one. But they
Okay.
can. It's a whole thing they can go in there and watch.
Yeah. Yeah. I think on mine it was the what was that, the virtual expo or something we
Yeah,
recorded that for.
yeah. We got
Yeah.
hoaxed into doing, and it turned out to be a disaster.
That was the expo that never happened.
Yeah, the expo that never happened that we
When
got.
COVID was going on, we was going
Yeah,
to do a virtual expo, and
yeah.
Dave and I was going to be giving this seminar. And
Hmm.
these folks contacted him and told us to put together this half-hour seminar,
I think it was
and
more than that. It was like 40 minutes.
it was almost, yeah. And I think you did edit it down to 35 or 36 minutes,
Yeah,
but it's a banging video, man. I mean, it's good. It's real
yeah,
good,
yeah.
and we cover a lot of stuff in that,
We
and
did.
people ought to take advantage of that.
Yeah. So
You know,
it wasn't a full waste of time.
no, no,
It was
it's on both our channels, so I
yeah,
mean,
it
you
was
can check
good
it out.
info. So
But
I wanna shift into third a little bit and talk about um woods food plots.
I love Woods food plots.
It's we're getting that time. It's actually a perfect time to start working on that type of stuff. So I wanted to, discuss that, and it's
I just
something.
cut some trees down in my woods to allow
Yeah,
more sunlight.
right. So let's
Yep.
let's kind of take somebody, because that's most hunter, not whatever the percentage is, they're planting something in the woods. They don't have
Yeah.
large acre like we discussed in the beginning. They
Right.
don't have they don't have large acres. Sometimes you just have to go in the woods, find a little, semi-open area, and people want to plant a food plot. So let's talk some of the pros with that, but
Okay.
also some of the cons with sunlight and
So
things. And we
so
can
starting
reference the farm.
yeah, we could. So starting out, first of all, you want to find a good spot that
Hmm.
you have good entrance and exit. And secondly, don't skip your soil tests.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
start
fail.
start there. Start there. And
Yeah.
then of course, you have to worry about sunlight. So,
Yeah, and the biggest thing with the woods food plot, like you said, is sunlight. And I learned that a long time ago, guys, is if you got to have sun on everything needs sun. And if you've had a failure in the past, you'll probably recognize this situation. But um, if you don't have enough sun, the plant, whatever it is that you plant, it'll grow. It's going to grow.
oh, it'll pop up.
It's going to pop up. But what happens is eventually it the sun is not hitting that plant, and it develops weak root system. So that plant grows tall, and then it doesn't have the sun, so the plant just flops over and lays flat. If you guys have seen that, it's either lack of sun or very low pH, because
Right.
it doesn't have that root structure to hold that plant vertical because it can't chase the sun,
Yeah.
basically. Um, woods food plots can be very good. I mean, you can have some very good success, but you're just
Yeah.
going to have to get sunlight. I see so many guys fail, and they're not allowed to cut trees, or whatever the case may be. If that's the case, like if you can't cut the trees, you don't have enough sun, don't waste your money, because you're going to fail.
Yeah.
You're not going to have good success with it.
Right. Yep. You'd be better off picking a trail, going to a plot somewhere, or a farmer's field, and
Hmm.
setting up and letting that be your food plot.
Yeah,
But as an example, when I moved here and built this house, my woods was nothing but a dark cavern down there. So such a thick canopy and nothing but ferns. I mean, ferns up to the knees. And I went down there with the climbing tree stand a few times, and just hit or miss, just climbed a straight tree and got up and watched where the deer came from.
that was
And I,
back in the day when you could actually use a climber,
yeah, I'm too old to do that now.
right?
But I went down there and I would watch and see where they were coming from. And then I kind of patterned that and I figured out what would be a good spot to put a plot down there. And it was a big learning curve because the main thing was we talk about sunlight, but look at it from this angle too. My problem was not enough sunlight because I had such wet ground down there. It was kind of almost swampy. It held so much moisture because there wasn't any sunlight. So I
Right.
wasn't, it wasn't. At the time I wasn't thinking photosynthesis sunlight. I was thinking I need to open this up to dry this up some because it was so
Mhm.
wet. And I had so many ferns, and I knew that that meant that the pH was very, very low. So I started hitting it with the lime heavy, and just every year it just gets better because
Mhm.
I go down every winter time and I take a couple more trees out. You know, before long I won't have any woods; it'll be all food plot down there.
Right.
But hey, I shoot deer down there every year, and I it's 2 acres, and I see deer every time I go down there and hunt.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it is very is you can be very prosperous on a small kill plot.
Yeah.
And I bet you that's not an eighth of an acre down there.
No, it's probably smaller than that.
It probably might be a 16th. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
is small.
It's
But
just enough for them to stop there and get a
yeah,
shot.
that's all I want. I want them to, when they're cruising through and they're going to my destination plots up over the hill here, they stop there. And like I said before, it gives me time to look them over
Mhm.
and see if I want to partake in their lives.
Yeah. Well, I'd um like to reference the pH issue, and I'll reference the farm. When we first cleared that quarter acre spot,
Hmm.
we did a soil sample and it was 4.6,
Yeah, it was
which is
horrible.
very low. Because it was all pines.
Yeah,
In those pine situations, woods situations, you're going to have probably low pH because of the decaying leaves, they're acidic and everything. But we added some lime to it that year, actual lime, pelletized lime, and
I think we put a whole pallet in it,
we
a whole
did.
ton.
Yep. And
Yep.
we rechecked it the following year, and it jumped from a 4.5 to a 5.9 the first year.
Was it that high? I couldn't
Yeah.
even remember that.
Yeah. Yep. I still got the soil samples on my phone.
Wow.
Um, I use them to show people sometimes, but we and the stuff grew, everything grew very well, and then we added another 1,000 pounds. The second, third time testing it, it was up to a 6.6. So
And I found a
people,
shed.
and you found a shed. And I say that because a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I can't. You can't raise the pH that fast. It doesn't work. I tried, it doesn't work." It works, but you have to use actual lime. I had a guy, it was like a quarter acre plot, and he sent me a message. He's like, "Hey, Dave, I have this quarter acre plot. pH is low. I added 100 pounds of lime."
100 pounds.
100 pounds. I said, "What are you going to do with 100 pounds? Like,
Yeah.
that's not going to do nothing. Like, you
No.
need to add lime, like,
What is
throw
it?
lime
They tell you what, 2,000 pounds
per acre."
per acre to raise you 1 point or something like that.
That's a stand
That's a
average,
generic
yeah, term.
thing. Yeah.
But I actually think it's more than that,
I think it is more than that.
and the soil has a lot to do with it as well.
See, but we had such a small
Yeah,
plot. It was
right.
under a quarter acre,
Yeah,
and
it was very concentrated
we
into
like
that
put
spot.
3,000 pounds on it in 2 years.
Yeah, yeah. The
You know.
lime. I mean, you need a lot of lime to move the numbers.
Yes.
It's just one of those things where you're just gonna have to do it. You need lime to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a whole nother debate with the liquid lime and stuff,
Oh,
but
I was just going to mention that.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not going to help you out. You need to add actual lime. You need to incorporate green manure into the soil to increase your CEC so that soil can actually hold that lime and nutrient levels.
You want calcium carbonate.
Yeah.
If it doesn't say carbonate after the calcium, you're not going to
Mhm.
be raising your pH.
Why don't you talk about real quick the uh, the lime? with the percentages and everything to make
Okay.
sure you're getting all the lime and not just filler.
Which portion now?
Calcium carbonate equivalent and all that.
Oh, yeah, the equivalent, yeah. Yeah, we talked about that before. If you flip a bag over, if you go to your local store and you buy a bag of lime, you
Mhm.
wanna look on the back of that bag, and you wanna see it should be listed as CCE, calcium carbonate equivalent, and that is telling you how much actual lime that you have in a bag.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a 40-pound bag and it says 90% CCE, 10% of that bag
Filler.
is filler. So you're not even getting a full 40-pound bag,
Mhm.
of lime.
Yeah.
So you really need, when you get your soil test back and it says you need 100 pounds of lime, okay, you had better, if you only needed 100, now this is just an example, if you only needed 100 pound of lime on the portion that they recommend to you, and you buy two 40-pound bags and it's 100% CCE, that's still only 80 pounds and they told you
Mhm.
needed 100, so you better buy
Right.
a third bag. Just a
Yeah.
small example there.
Mhm.
But yeah, when you get your soil test back and they give you a recommendation for how much lime you need per whatever you put in for eighth, quarter, acre, whatever they tell you, or whatever you uh, got the test for. When they tell you how much you need to make sure that you have whatever your calcium carbonate equivalent is percentage wise, that it's going to match up poundage wise with what they recommended for you.
All right, I'm in park, guys. You got anything else?
I think we're good for this
Yeah.
week.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody listening. Video version on Chris's channel. Um, and I appreciate everybody listening. We're getting the views are starting to stack up on the audio on the
Yeah.
podcast with Apple and Spotify. And what really would help us, guys, if you're listening to this, just drop a review on Apple and Spotify. It'll help us out if you enjoyed the podcast, and it'll kind of it's still new, and it'll bump us up in the rankings a little bit. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that's it. That's all I got.
All right. We'll see you all next week.
Number 9.
Okay.
Later.